Welcome back to the channel, guys, and welcome to all my new followers. In this week's episode, we're going to do a little bit of a review on the Mamiya 645 Pro TL. It's not going to be like an in-depth technical review. There's plenty of information out there for you to read online. I'll make a couple of links down in the show notes. And there are some other videos that are very helpful when it comes down to the technical aspects. We will talk about just a few highlights that this camera has and maybe why you should buy it and who is it for. First, I'd like to talk about the resolution of the 645 platform. Some say that it might not be worth the jump from 35mm, but it certainly is worth the jump. When I scan in a 35mm negative, I get about a 30 megapixel file. And when I scan this negative from the Mamiya 645 or 645, which is in essence just a little bit less than 6 by 4.5. I'll put up the numbers because I don't know exactly, doesn't matter. But anyway, when I scan that file, I get a 35 megapixel file. And you can see the megabits on the TIFF file. That's quite a bit more information that you get. To say that that is not worth the jump, it is almost 2.7, 2.69, something if you calculate it. But it is quite a jump in resolution, and I would venture to say that it's absolutely worth the jump. It's definitely a considerable jump in resolution. If you pixel peep a little bit, you will definitely see all of that. Secondly, guys, I'd like to talk about some of the highlights of the camera. And I have put a strap on this guy because when you walk around with this camera, this is the best sort of strap system that I've ever had. The camera just hangs down where you can grab it right away. If you were to have the grip on it, I can see you grabbing it right away like that. Maybe the balance is a little off when you have the grip on there, but it balances really well. And I spent quite a bit of money on this camera, so I'm not that jumpy to let it drop. So I do have a strap on there. I've evolved a little bit. In those cases where I don't need the strap, I'm not going to wear one. Secondly, the lenses. I've only ever owned one, but I did a little bit of research. I would say that this lens, Mamiya has two different versions of essentially the same lenses, which are the C-Core C, the older versions, and the C-Core N version. The C-Core N versions are newer. Most people rave about them, both C-Core C and C-Core N. But what I found about this lens is that the color fidelity is about as true to life as I've seen in any lens. And that's really what you want in a system like this, because this was really a system. Which brings me to the third point, which I'd like to talk about, is the modularity of this system. I haven't seen anything out there that has more accessories than this camera or than this system. You can make it really your own. You can adjust it or really, its modularity allows you to adjust it to every kind of photography that you can think of. Even street. Remember, you might not think, well, street, that's 35mm. Vivian Maier did nothing but medium format out on the street. So you could put a waist level viewfinder on here and just do street photography. Keep it very simple, keep it low key without the hand grip on there. And it's quiet enough out on the streets. It's not a real quiet camera, but you could use it out on the streets. A little side note there, that whole debate about, I need the most quiet camera out on the streets. You don't. You really need a camera that you're comfortable with, that you're confident with, and that you can make the photos with that you want to create. But all that debate of, this has to be quiet. That's why in my other video I've spoken a little bit of fun. You don't really need the most quiet camera. But anyway, this is quiet enough for you to use out on the streets. So it's modularity. There are tons of accessories available to where you can really make this camera your own. There's even a bellows system, a wireless remote control on there, a trigger essentially. You name it, it has it. there is a brochure online, and I'll link it down in the show notes, and you can see just how many accessories are available for this camera. Then the reason that I bought the TL version, and I'll do a separate video on that, because shooting in TL with this camera is wonderful. I still have to buy a couple of accessories. You just need a few adapters in the SCA, the Metz SCA system camera adapter system that Metz created back in the day, in order for you to use the same flash on different platforms, on different camera systems. You know, different camera systems are going to have different pins on their hot shoe. Metz has enabled you through that system to use their flashes on a cross-platform way, which is really handy. But I'll make a separate video on that. I think it is handy to have TTL flash. It allows you to be a little bit more, you know, a little faster, a little quicker. I'm going to set up a portrait service again. I'm certainly going to use this camera in that in my workflow. With the different lens, I'm going to buy the 80mm. And then you might say, well, Davey, this camera has a 60th of a second shutter speed, which in other videos you've said that is pretty abysmal. And that's what I thought too. But actually, if you use this camera, it's so heavy that you hold it pretty steadily to your face. There's almost no movement, if any. I'm sure if you pixel peep, you'll see maybe a little bit, but you just don't see that normally in a normal print. Nobody's going to see that. I have pixel peeped, and I really haven't seen much of a difference when putting it on versus putting it on a tripod or hand holding it. Secondly, Mamiya has made 3 lenses, a 55, an 80, and a 150, that have leaf shutters in there. Hey, and now you can sync flash with this up to 1/500th of a second with its TTL system, which is really great for adding fill flash in photo shoots during daylight, during midday situations, or during golden hour situations, or whenever you're shooting. 1/500th of a second on film. That's fantastic. You don't see that anywhere on digital. So that's definitely one thing that really attracted me about this whole system. Its flash system, its modularity, some of the little quirks that it has. You would have to just look it up for yourself. There's plenty of videos on there. It isn't the most, in this form factor, it isn't the most ergonomic when you put it in portrait mode. The shutter button now becomes, it's on your left finger. The reason it ends up on my left finger is because one genius little move is putting the flash, the hot shoe, on the left side, which now puts it above, the camera. And if you take a picture in portrait mode, you don't have a nasty shadow behind your subject, which is incredibly cool to have. You don't have that nasty shadow. Some pictures you don't even really see flash has been used. That's one thing that is a little quirky, the shutter button. But if you use the grip on there, you have that extra shutter button there, which I kind of don't miss. I haven't really had a need for that with this camera, because mostly I do shoot 35mm. But really brilliant to put the hot shoe on the left side, which then puts it on top essentially when you shoot in portrait mode. Also, the metered prism has a spot meter and an average meter. The average meter is a center weighted. It looks like in the brochure you see, it looks like it's about a 70-30 ratio, somewhere in that region. And it shows, because I think it's a very accurate meter. Some people say it underexposes a little bit, but you can easily adjust that with the exposure compensation button on top. I haven't seen that. It could be your personal copy that is that way. Who knows? I haven't had an issue with underexposure. I think this meter is spot on. I love this metered prism. That was one of the things that I did need. But you can get a waist lever finder. You can get a same sort of prism that doesn't have a meter on there. And then you can get another metered prism that looks a little weird, a little funny to me, but you can see that in the brochure. Yeah, swapping out the backs. That's another thing. You know, mid-roll, you can swap out a back, put another back in there. And initially I thought, like, why did they put the ISO dial, you know, the ISO compensation dial on the back? But it makes perfect sense because you're going to switch the back out and you're immediately set for the ISO that's already in use. So that's another brilliant move. Some people nag about it like, oh yeah, you can hardly move it, blah, blah, blah. But you really only you're setting it once and you're done. You can take the back off and adjust it that way. There are people that are going to nag about just about everything, but I love this camera. It is definitely worth the jump. They're getting pricier. One thing that I would advise you to do, and that you could possibly do, is just buy it in its different parts. You can buy the camera first, then maybe a back, then the prism, and then a lens, and you're good to go. And you'll save a lot of money. If you buy it as a kit, so to say, you're going to spend a little bit more. Well, guys, yeah, that's it on the wonderful Mamiya 645 Pro TL that I really do love. It's a wonderful camera. Let me know if you shoot with one and in what configuration and what do you use it for? Because I think this is a camera that suits just about any and every style that you can think of, just because of its modularity. Guys, I love you, and I'll see you in the next one.